Hey, good morning, everybody. It's Hammer. Today is Tuesday, January 14th, 2025. I, of course, am here with your daily mortgage rate update, the only place on the web where you get to join me live each and every weekday morning, 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time, broadcasted to you on Facebook and on YouTube from the beautiful, wonderful, and great Smoky Mountains. In fact, let me see. I got a quick, cool picture for you here. So let me show you. Hold on, I'm going to share my screen. Let me show you where I broadcast to you from. So this is a picture this morning. I ran out and had breakfast. This is the moon, and you can see the Smoky Mountains here. And right here, and in fact, let's do that. Let's see. Let me click on this. Right here, you will see that is my house right there on the ridge over here. Not on the top of the mountain. The mountaintop is actually right here, but up here on the ridge, because the trees are bare, you can actually see my house right there. And I am up on the ridge. This is where I live. So that is where I am. And that is why every morning I get to see the beautiful smoke of the Smoky Mountains here. And this is why they call it the Smoky Mountains. So anyway, just figured I'd have some fun sharing. That is where I am. So if you are here live, say good morning. If you're watching the replay, don't forget to give me a hashtag replay in the comments. Let me know that you were here. And yes, Mr. Ron Siegel, that is the secret worldwide headquarters of the one and only Hammer of Hammer Solutions. That is correct. And in fact, here, check this out. Let me bring this up. I was playing with program yesterday with Napkin, if any of you all have ever heard of it. And let me show you what I am working on. Hold on one second. Again, I know y'all are being so patient today. I haven't even said hello to everybody yet. I'm just sharing all these fun things, but that's okay. We're giving everyone a chance to hop on because there's only 14 people on yet. Here is the unified brand strategy of Hammer Solutions. That is actually the name of my company for the last 15 years. We got Originator Success, which y'all are familiar with. We'll be rolling out Agent Success soon. We've got Grab and Go Social, which I am really excited about. We're going to be running with that. And then soon you will see the new brands for Mortgage Rate Advantage and Rate Sensei. So there you go. Those are the fun brands that are under Hammer Solutions. Originator Success is actually not the company. It's just a product. It's just a brand. The company is Hammer Solutions. So anyway, that's kind of where we are on that. I'll stop sharing though. So let me turn that off. Let me let Miss Millie in. She's waiting by the door, and then we'll get started. So come on, Miss Millie. Come on, Miss Millie. Come on in. I know, huh? Big stretch. All right, go on out. Thanks for your patience, y'all. Miss Millie is the kitty cat. It's 16 degrees out, so we were letting her in. All right, let's say good morning to the live folks. Who do we got here this morning? If you're here this morning, say good morning. Would love to be able to say hello to you. Got Mr. Ron Siegel on. Good morning, sir. We got Allison Foy. Good morning, Allison. Hope you are doing well. We got Mallory Fodiatis. Good morning. Amy Blauser, great to have you here. Tom Stafford, good to see you. Colin Jordan, hello, sir. Megan Lindberg, thank you for joining. Candido Diaz, hope things are well. I'll bet you I have more snow, Candido, than you do, man. Mike Steele, good morning. Nathan Einkorn, great to have you here, my friend. Michael Love, good to see you, sir. Yasmin Martin, thank you for joining as always. Dan Crowley, appreciate you. All right, friends, let's go ahead and dive into it, and we'll go from there. So quick recap. Yesterday, bonds ended the day basically the same as when pricing came out. Let me go ahead and we will get rid of this and pop this on here. So right here, you can see mortgage-backed securities. When pricing came out, they were around 99.60-ish. End of the day, 99.60. So really flat on the day yesterday. What that means is that pricing today, rate sheets today, should be very similar to yesterday. Now, this morning, we did go wholesale inflation data. The producer price index, the PPI, came in surprisingly lower than expected for the month over month. The producer price index rose 0.2%, which is lower than the estimates of 0.4%. However, that was blamed on a drop in food prices. The core numbers, which take out food and energy, were actually unchanged from November. So that was a little bit lower than what was expected. Now, compared with a year earlier, though, the overall producer price index climbed 3.3% and core advanced 3.5%, both the highest since February 2023. Now, why does all that matter? Really, it's not a big one. Tomorrow, we're going to get the consumer price index, the consumer inflation data, and that's going to be a big deal, and it could be a really big deal. I'm going to show you why in a minute. But the producer price index, the wholesale inflation data, a lot less of a market mover. So what that actually caused this morning was we saw a small improvement for about 30 seconds as the data came out. You could see it here. There was a little bit of a blurb, and then it just kind of disappeared. There was not much on it. We take a look at the 10-year Treasury yield this morning, and we are seeing that it is at 4.79, basically where it ended yesterday. Reprice risk on the day is moderate. I can't quite call it low. There's not a lot going on that we should have to worry about at this point to shake things up, but even still, we could see bonds drift lower ahead of that producer or ahead of tomorrow's consumer price index and what's going on. So this is, we're already down a couple of basis points. It could get worse. It's not that we have a big day where lenders should necessarily set us up, but it could get a little bit. So as far as the outlook, again, we could see rates move higher this week, and that's even more of a big deal if this CPI data moves. And in fact, there's a really interesting article here in Bloomberg. Traders brace for the S&P 500's busiest CPI since March 2023. Now, what's kind of funny here, normally, so we've seen stocks lose ground the last few days as, markets react to what's going on with everything. And normally the argument is when stocks do poorly, the conventional thinking, conventional thinking was, it used to be that when stocks did poorly, bonds would recover and pick up that money, and that was a good thing for bonds, right? However, that's not the case anymore. That's not how things work. And that's why, the last couple of days, you haven't really seen bonds improve, even though stocks have been taking it on the chin. Now, this, though, is interesting. Option traders whipsawed the stock market's recent gyrations, whipsawed by the stock market's recent gyrations, are getting anxious that more bouts of volatility may arrive in the coming days, starting with Wednesday's report on consumer prices. Now, again, take these articles with a grain of salt, right? But reading between the lines, this is actually very true. Soaring bond yields, robust job data have put extra focus on the next consumer price index. Remember, everyone is looking what the Fed is going to do. Is the Fed going to cut rates? There'll be talk coming soon about the Fed hiking rates. That's going to come up again. And the Fed has a dual mandate. They focus on two things. They focus on employment and they focus on pricing stability. Pricing stability is inflation. Now, for years, we have over-focused on inflation because inflation was such a huge problem, and the labor market was doing just fine. It was heated up. It was doing great. When inflation started to get in check after the Fed raised rates again and again and again, hiking, well, then the repercussion is that weakens the labor market. So then the focus switched from inflation to the labor market. We saw a few months where we saw weak economic labor data, and it kind of slowed things down. And then the Fed cut. They cut half a point in September, cut in November, cut in December. Now, the labor market, especially like last week, again, we could argue about the validity of the data, but the data is the data, and it comes out consistently enough that it is what it is. And it's showing a labor market that is doing just fine. So the Fed is now focused more on inflation again. Now, there's expectation that inflation could move higher under the new Trump administration. There's talk of tariffs, there's tax cuts, there's overall consumer optimism. All right. So all of these things come into play. Now, a great example here. Let me see if I can find the article that I'm thinking about in my mind. It was one about if Trump were to raise rates and what they would try to do on the tariffs. I don't see it now, so don't worry about it. But anyway, there's talk right now of maybe increasing tariffs gradually to try to fight inflation, things like that. But more focused on tomorrow's CPI inflation data. Here's what you really got to pick up, right? The S&P 500 index expected to move 1%, which is a big amount for the S&P in either direction tomorrow, based on the cost of at-the-money puts and calls, according to Stuart Kaiser, Citigroup Inc.'s head of the U.S. equity trading strategy. That's the largest implied move ahead of a CPI print since the regional bank turmoil back in March of 2023. And if you remember, we had a lot of movement back in March 2023 with the bank stuff, banks that were failing, the regional banks, not the big ones, right? So, but if you take a look here, kind of get an idea, concern about sticky inflation and the Fed's path to contain it has pushed the CBOE volatility index towards 20, a level that signals concern among traders as the S&P 500 wiped out its gains for the year. Measures of expected and realized volatility are both starting 2025 at above average levels, according to derivatives analytical firm ASIM 500. What our takeaway here is there is a lot of potential volatility. Markets are wound tight like a rubber band. They're pulled, they're turned. I'm thinking of one of those airplanes where you used to had a rubber band where you used to turn the propeller and the rubber band would turn and turn and turn until it would fold in on itself and waiting to explode. Or you could just say that you're pulling that rubber band and waiting to let go and have it snap back, right? But any of this, tomorrow's CPI data, we could see a very strong reaction. And anything that happens in stocks, we're going to see a strong reaction in bonds as well. Now, it used to be, oh, well, hey, if the S&P 500 sells off, if stocks sell off, bonds will win. Not anymore. If we see stocks sell off, bonds are going to sell off too. That's the way that things kind of work now. They tend to more work in lockstep. So you can see this morning, mortgage bonds down about 4 basis points. The advice remains lock them if you got them. I do not see any light at the end of this tunnel. Anything closing in the next couple of weeks, there's no reason to expect that tomorrow's CPI data is going to come in weak. And if it did, yes, it would help rate sheets for a day or two, but it wouldn't be a long-term thing. It would be very small and probably not very likely to begin with. The chances of that happening are slim. Loans that close in the next 15 to 30 days, there's nothing going on that should make us expect to see any improvement from here. Hold on, I got a hangnail that's bothering me. Do y'all ever get that when it gets dry and this time of the year and my OCD's kicking in and it's bothering me? There we go. So anyway, thank you. Anyway, there's no light at the end of the tunnel, y'all. You want to be locking in. Ron said, in addition to the CPI tomorrow, JP Morgan reports earnings before the market opens. Their guidance could be market moving. Their comments on credit quality could be important. I don't even touch on some of that stuff, Ron. I'm aware of it, but I don't even, I focus on the big things. But you're absolutely right. Give Ron some credit on that one. Russell said, how do you do, Mr. Russell Street? Tim Klyla, great to see you. Chris Weber. I'll tell you, Chris, I think the Fed is getting a boatload of shit on this for no good reason. Chris said the Fed always drives in the rearview mirror. They have very little in today's much more complex economic structure. They have such a basic tool. They can do quantitative tightening or quantitative easing, which they've been quantitative tightening since 2022, y'all. I saw a Facebook post yesterday talking about quantitative easing, and it was like they had no idea what they were talking about. I don't want to be mean, but just no idea. But the quantitative tightening, and then the other tool, of course, is the Fed funds rate. And yes, they are driving with the rearview mirror, but remember something. This is like the storm. This is like the weather, okay? The economy is like the weather, whereas you've got so many variables. There's this jet stream, there's this movement of wind, there's this going on here, and these things can shift or move and things play out. I got to tell you, I don't want to get too deep into the political quagmire, but in August and September, I don't think markets were really expecting Trump to pull out a win. I think they were expecting a Democratic win. It was only when it became obvious that Trump was in the race, not that he was going to win, but that he was in the race, and then it became likely that he would win, that we started to see everything shift and markets react accordingly. Remember, Trump administration talking about lower taxes, you're talking about tariffs, you're talking about a warmer economy. A strong economy is bad for rates. That puts the Fed has to try to slow that down. So we've seen there's a reason that all these things changed. Forgive me. I'll be right back. I'm sneezing in there. I want to slow that down. So there's a reason that all these things have changed. There's a reason the Fed is shifting. I think the Fed is getting a lot of grief, Chris, that they don't deserve, especially Powell. People complain on Powell because he's the face of it all, but I think the guy has navigated us through the pandemic, the ensuing ridiculousness with inflation. Nobody expected inflation to take off, and they said it was transitory. Yes, but that's because everybody figured the supply chains would open back up and things would come back down. Nobody experienced what we have. If you want to blame somebody, I'd be blaming the banks right now. The fact that they are extending credit in record numbers, people are able to dig themselves a hole and put themselves deeper in debt than ever before. And basically, consumers are propping up the economy with money they don't have. And the Fed is constantly trying to, sail a ship in very, very rocky, choppy waters. And that's because of all of the stuff that's going on. It all stems from spending. If people go broke and don't spend money, then the companies start to slow down and there's layoffs. And all of this stuff is all related. And it really has to do with consumer spending money. And where's that money coming from? Well, it's coming from credit. And that's what's really driving it. As far as where mortgage rates, I know it's hurting. I know it hurts all of us, but mortgage rates are where they're at. Mortgage rates are not the problem. Rates in the 7s are not the problem. Home prices are. And you want to know why home prices are so high? Because there's not enough inventory, and there hasn't been 10 or 15 years. And that's the problem. There's not enough inventory. Look at what's going to happen in that market over in California. Look at what's going to happen to that rental market. There's already talk of it. Although there are laws in place that landlords are not allowed to price gouge because of the natural tragedy that's going on. I forget what the actual rules are, but they're not allowed to take advantage of it and price gouge. There's caps on things, but even still, there's a lot of people that have all of a sudden hit a market and need a place to live. What are they going to do? And these are people with money. Right? So what do people with money do? They throw more money at it. This guy offers you $10,000. I'll give you $15,000. I'll give you $20,000. So, there's talk of places that are going for $40,000 a month because these are people that have millions and millions. One of the houses that got wiped out on Billionaires Row, the guy had just put $27 million in. He spent $500,000 on some kind of imported marble in the kitchen. Guys, that's one room. That's not even the whole house. So anyway, Ron, yesterday's DDB report references how bad the job outlook is. I don't agree with her though. I think she's wrong. She's much more educated and probably brighter than I am, but I think she's wrong. She doesn't share any opinions. She only shares the data. Yeah, but sharing the data and basing opinions on that data, we're in a different realm. We've already seen basing forecasts on data doesn't work anymore because everything is constantly shifting. We were supposed to be in a recession. We were supposed to be this. We were supposed to be that. Inverse yield curve. It's done this. It's done that. None of it. It's all different. Everything has changed. All the inner workings of the game have changed, and that's why you see what you see going on. So, yeah, you know what, Ron? Again, I'm usually a critical guy, but I do not hate how the Fed has navigated this water. I don't. Look at talking back about that March 2023 regional banking issue. They took care of that, boom, like that, something that they had within their control. How about when we had a huge concern about banks having to take mortgage-backed securities and, that were just all of a sudden we had a huge drop in value in mortgage-backed securities. If they had to mark to market, it was going to create a huge problem. What did they do? They created a lending window so that they could then get, based on the value of expectation on maturity instead of where they were at today. So many different things. I think the Fed has reacted really well. They get a lot of grief. I like the way Powell communicates in his press conferences. I like the fact that instead they used to have a press conference like every other meeting. Now they have a press conference every meeting. I think they've really done well through all of this. I think they get a lot of bad press. So, all right, my friends, well, I'm going to wrap it up. Thank you for joining me. Again, when it comes to rates and pricing, I do not see much hope for tomorrow. I think we're going to wake up. Remember, that data comes out 8:30 a.m. Eastern time, which means that you're going to wake up and see rate sheets that are going to take on whichever way it goes. There is a small chance that it could improve pricing. We could wake up and be like, oh man, I wish I had floated because rate sheets are better, but the chances are slim, and you can't you know what? Hoping is not a lock strategy, right? So locking for protection is the right move here, even though we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. But the chances are, if it's bad, it's going to be very, very bad. And if it's good, it's only going to be okay. Ron said caps only apply to the landlord. If the renters offer more to win the lease, there's no law against the buyer offering more and the landlord accepting an outrageous amount, bidding wars for rentals. Yeah, and that's what I'm talking about, Ron. You're absolutely right. So, all right, my friends, I'm going to wrap it up. I'll see you tomorrow. We'll talk about what happens with that CPI inflation data, and we'll see just where rates are headed. So, but for today, 10-year Treasury 4.79, mortgage bonds 99.60, we'll call it. Let's see what tomorrow brings. Take care, my friends. Bye-bye.